Hello there, YouTube. My name is Brandon. I'm with Task Force Pest and Mold Control. And today's video, we're going to go over mold remediation, what it is, what it isn't, and what to look for in your contractor when you're hiring someone to do your mold remediation job. So with that in mind, let's jump right into it. So please excuse my hat hair today. I've been wearing my hat all day. I just took it off to make this video. And the purpose of this video is I've ran into so many customers who don't have a whole lot of resources for mold remediation and what it is and how they know they're picking the right contractor. And I'm hoping this video helps somebody. If somebody Googles it or somebody types it into YouTube, somebody will come across this video and be more informed. So if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please share it to somebody you think may need to see this. Even someone who works in the mold remediation field. This could be a very good learning experience for other mold remediators as well. And again, with that, let's jump right into the meat and potatoes here. So the main thing that I want to go over is what mold remediation is and what it is not. So a lot of pest control companies, and I hate to say this because I started out as a pest control company, a lot of pest control companies think they can do mold remediation because they have a pest license known as 7D, 7 Delta, which is essentially the pest control license for treating what we know as wood rot or wood destroying fungus. And that's not the case. So that does work from a pest control perspective. If your goal is to kill the mold so that it doesn't hurt the wood anymore, doesn't destroy the wood, then yes, that what they do, the borate treatments they use will work for that. But if you want to prevent the mold from being a health hazard or prevent it from actually spreading, borate treatments are not a catch-all be-all, and it's not mold remediation. It's a pest remediation. So with that in mind, what is mold remediation? So when we go in and we do a test, especially like an air test, they're not usually the best ways to test for mold, but if we go in and we do an air test, we take one from the outside of your house, and then we take one maybe on each individual level of your home. With all the doors and everything open to make sure the air is flowing as best as possible. We might go room by room, depending on how big the home is. And what we do is when we test, we send all that to the lab, and the lab will give us the samples back, and they'll tell us, or they'll show us, each page usually has the outside sample on one side and each other individual sample we took on the other side, all the way down throughout each sample that we took. And we notice when we go through, we look for things that are elevated on the outside sample. Things like different types of spores might be high outside, which is normal. There's what we call a normal ecology of mold, which is a category 1. There's supposed to be mold. It's supposed to be in the environment. Its entire purpose is to break down organic matter to recycle it into the earth. And so you want category 1. That's perfectly normal mold levels. But if we notice that you have elevated levels of different types of mold inside the home, that especially ones that aren't showing up outside, that tells us there are conducive conditions that are breeding mold in the inside environment somehow. And then it's our job as mold remediators to ask that third party that we have essentially do the laboratory test if it's considered a harmful amount of mold, if it's something that they would recommend remediation for. And if it is, then it's our job to find out where that moisture is coming from that's feeding the mold, how to prevent it in the future, and how to remediate what's already there and get rid of it so that the customer doesn't have any adverse health effects. And again, all of this is stuff that you can't do by just spraying borate on the mold you see on wood. Another issue with the borate treatment is that mold spores are airborne. Mold is just like any other plant. Mold has spores, where some plants have what we call pollen. But if you think about it, the same concept as pollen, it's in the air. It's everywhere, especially around springtime and summertime. You walk out and you look at your car, it's covered in pollen because it's floating through the air, taking the air currents and landing wherever it lands to pollinate other flowers of that species or cross-pollinate with other species. And when that process happens, treating the flower itself isn't going to do anything. The pollen's already in the air. Just like in a crawl space or an attic with mold, you're going to have those mold spores in the air. They're going to be on the vapor barrier. They're going to be on the wood. They're going to be on the insulation. They're going to be on the walls. They're going to be everywhere. If your HVAC doesn't have good enough filters that are made to filter out allergens and mold spores, it's in your HVAC system. It's on your filters. It's coming through your HVAC system into the different levels of your home. So we have to determine, using our testing methods and our visual and, believe it or not, our nasal inspections, you can usually smell mold a lot better than most devices can pick up on mold. But we have to use our different methods and techniques to figure out where the mold is, how bad it is, and how to remediate. So with that in mind, knowing what mold remediation is and knowing what it isn't, how to pick a contractor that's going to do the right job for you. So unsurprisingly, the first thing I'm going to mention is price. If you have someone quoting you a price that seems to be a little too good to be true, it most definitely is. Every time, all the time. The Federal Trade Commission did a review on all of their complaints they've had on contractors, and come to find out, over 80% of complaints that were filed against contractors, of those 80% of those were done by the cheapest bidder. So there's a good chance that if you get a job done and you pick the cheapest bidder, you're going to complain and you're going to have somebody come back and fix it later. And then it makes more sense when you think about it. If this guy's offering you $500 to fix a problem and this guy's offering you $750, if the $500 guy messes up, then you now have to hire the $750 guy to come back and fix it. So now you're paying, what is that? $1,250 to fix the same issue. You could have hired the one company at $750 to come in and fix it for you. You're almost paying double. And it not that price is always the determining factor, because when it comes to mold remediation, you could get 3 separate quotes and each quote be all over the place. You could get one for $1,000, one for $5,000, one for $10,000, one for $30,000, all for the same job. And it's not that any one of them is trying to rip you off or undercut the other guys. What it usually is this guy's going to do a lot more for you than this guy, and this guy. This guy is probably the borate guy who's going to go in, spray the mold, kill it, call it a day. This guy is probably the guy who's going to go in, kill it, work on different types of remediation methods to get the mold out of maybe your HVAC system or something. This guy's going to do all that and prevent the moisture issue. This guy's going to do all that, prevent the moisture issue, and put a 30-year warranty on it. So it really depends on the level of care you want out of the job. But when it comes to that, whoever has a good warranty is also another thing you really want to pay attention to. Because if you get 4 different prices, but 2 of them have a 1-year warranty, and this guy has a 10-year warranty, why wouldn't you want to take that 10-year warranty? You want to take the warranty that's going to last you a long time. And it also depends on what those warranties are offering you. This guy's warranty might just be, we give you 50% off if you have mold issues in the future. This guy might be, the first year we give you all extensive, everything encompassing warranty, where we come back, we completely treat to get it back down to whatever level it needs to be for free of charge, because it was our fault, we should have fixed it in the first place. So that's another big component when you're thinking about this, when you're contemplating jobs from different contractors. I recommend everybody get at least 3 quotes. You don't have to hire them to all do testing, hire one company to do the testing. But you do want to make sure whatever company you hire to do your testing uses a third-party lab. You don't want someone who's going to test it and then take it to their lab and have it done in-house, because it's a huge conflict of interest. It's the equivalency of having a boxing match and one of the boxers being the referee. It doesn't make sense. So you want to make sure that when they're testing, ask them, do you guys use a third party for your testing or to interpret the results? And if they say yes, awesome, cool, I want to work with you guys. And then have the other companies that you get quotes from work off of that testing protocol. So they come in, they say, well, these are the levels, okay, these are where it's at, so we know that. This is our quote. Try not to give them too much information about what the last guy said or what the last guy wants to do. Just kind of see what they want to do on their own, because they might offer more, they might offer less. If they're smart, they'll give you multiple options. They'll have an option A, B, and C of different things they could do, different price points. One might have different pros, different cons, things of that nature. But you definitely want to make sure you're getting more than just one quote. The other thing I want to mention is you don't want somebody to roll up with you and hand you one of these. I have literally had a customer show me one of these that they had a company do. It wasn't handwritten like this, but essentially all it said was mold treatment and had the customer's signature on it, and the company signature had literally nothing else on there except their logo in the corner. And that's just, it's unacceptable. Like, if you're a professional company and you're doing this for a living, you need to have what you've done, what you're going to do, what your warranty is. All that needs to be included in your paperwork. And just for example, I had to put stickers over this so I don't show any customer information. I meant to print this portrait and accidentally printed it landscape. But for example, when we go in and do a remediation job, you're going to notice that we have all the line items here of different things that we're doing. And then on the opposite side, we have the cost, unit price, what the total amount is. And then when we separate the different plans, it'll total out that plan and then go into the next plan. And it's detailed. It goes over exactly what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, why we're going to do it. And we always like to open the floor up to the customer and ask them tell them if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. We can answer anything about any one of these processes for you. So you want to make sure that their paperwork is relatively extensive, that they're explaining what they're going to do or what they have done. Another thing that I tell everybody is insurance. It's very important. You want to make sure they have an insurance form, particularly an Accord form. Goes over all their coverages, what kinds of things they're covered for, what kind of things they're not covered for, and you want to make sure it's valid. A lot of fly-by-night companies will get their Accord form, never pay another dime on it. They've defaulted on their insurance, but you have no way of knowing because they have that Accord form. Actually probably the most important thing in this video, if you don't listen to anything else that I have to say in this video, definitely hear me out on this one. Credentials. So there are only 5 states in the United States that require a contractor license for mold remediation. And those 5 states are New York, Florida, Tennessee, Texas, and Louisiana. And if you live outside of those states, there is no regulatory office or officer that's going to regulate what goes on with mold remediation. A company can just slap a magnet on their truck, say I'm a mold remediation company, and there's no recourse if they do it wrong or if they don't do it at all. So you're kind of reliant on what that company says in their warranty, what their work says on their paperwork, and what you've agreed to. Other than that, there is no state or federal standard for what they're going to do. So you really want to make sure their paperwork is thorough. But another thing I want to bring up, this one is mine. You want to make sure that they are certified somehow, some way, as mold remediators and or mold inspectors. Probably can't see it on the camera, but on the wall behind me, it's a very big deal for Task Force Mold Control that every one of my technicians be certified mold remediators, and the ones who are inspecting are certified mold inspectors. I make sure to put all of them through this course. It is 114 hours in total, so it's a lot of school, it's a lot of learning, it's a lot of making sure that they know exactly what they're getting into, but it's worth it in the long run because any one of my guys knows if something isn't being done right. So if I send 4 of them to a job, then they'll all correct each other. This wasn't done correctly, let's fix this. This wasn't done correctly, let's go ahead and fix that while we're here. And then they check each other. And it's super important because when you get technicians that are undertrained, like a lot of these companies have, they have the boss or the supervisor who is the only one trained, and then everybody else is just an hourly employee who's barely paid anything, who has got minimal training, and the boss is just trusting them to get in this crawl space and do the right thing. And it's not always the case. A lot of times they get in there, they'll do it as little work as they can. They won't remove everything. They'll try to get out of doing work, and it's just Either that or they just don't understand what they're supposed to do, so they, excuse the term, but they half-ass it. And it's just not something I ever want to see in my company, so I make sure that all of my technicians are certified. They all know what they're doing. It's their license on the line if they mess up. So, with that in mind, another thing that I want to go over is anything porous. Yeah, anything porous needs to be removed from the area. If you have a crawl space and you have insulation in your crawl space, especially fiberglass or mineral wool, and you have what's called a category 3 where you have physical mold growth that you can see, all of that insulation needs to be pulled out and removed. Even if it's a category 2, which is where spores are present and essentially displaced everywhere, you still want to remove that insulation because mold can and will grow inside of insulation. You hear all the time people will say that fiberglass is not a substrate or food for mold, and it's just semi-true. So the way that fiberglass insulates is you have all the fibers of the fiberglass, pockets of air, more fiberglass, pockets of air, more fiberglass, and those pockets of air are what provide a lot of that insulation value, that R value, the resistance value. But those pockets of air also hold substrates. So if you have dust in your crawl space, dirt, you have a lot of moisture, which you have to have mold. You have to have some kind of moisture down there. Any of that moisture, as it's evaporating, gets trapped inside those fibers. And once they get trapped inside those fibers with dirt, dust, and other types of debris, it becomes a substrate for mold to grow on. You can Google fiberglass insulation mold and see hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures of fiberglass covered in mold. So it's another thing you really want to keep in mind when it comes to having a company do your remediation job. If they say you have really bad mold that needs to be treated, but they're not removing your insulation, there's something wrong with that picture. While we're on the subject of insulation, once insulation, especially fiberglass or mineral wool, gets wet, it is worthless. The R value for that insulation is now completely, if not very close to completely gone. Water will turn R30 insulation into R5 insulation pretty quickly. And if you have enough moisture for mold to grow, you have enough moisture for your insulation to be worthless. So it all needs to be replaced anyway. And you want to make sure when you're hiring a company that does restoration as well. Sometimes you'll get a mold company that just does the remediation. So they will remove everything, they'll treat the mold, they'll get it back to a category 1 where it's supposed to be, but they won't replace what they removed. Sometimes you'll get a restoration company as well as a mold remediation company who will come in and replace what they pulled out. Sometimes you got to get them in 2 separate package deals. But you want to make sure whoever's doing the restoration knows what your code is for your state. I want to bring this up as an example. This is a map of West Virginia. When I worked with another major pest control company in the area and we did insulation jobs, they would always treat Berkeley and Jefferson County, which are these top 2 up here, like they needed to have R30. They would tell customers all the time, you have to have R30 in your basement and or crawl space because it's required. And if you actually look at the form, like this is from the IECC compliance guide for homes in West Virginia, it specifies that anything in blue needs R30 and anything in green needs R19. And all of the counties we service up here were in green. But they had no idea because they never looked it up. They never bothered. I think someone in the company just Googled it once and just went with whatever Google said. So you want to make sure that they understand what your state or what your area in specific requires. And that they're not just kind of winging it. So with all of that in mind, another thing you kind of want to keep in the back of your mind as you're talking to these mold remediation companies is you want to make sure that aside from the knowledge and the information and everything they're going to go over, you want the most bang for your buck. So if you're going to get a company that's going to come in and remediate, they're going to treat the moisture issue, they're going to do a vapor barrier, they're going to encapsulate your crawl space, they're going to add the insulation back, and they give you a decent price for it, they're probably your best bet because it means that they know not just the remediation side of it, but they know the restoration side of it. Whereas if you get a company that's just going to remove and their price is a little high or their price is around the same ballpark, you want to ask them, what makes you guys different? Why is your price where it's at? And again, if they don't have paperwork that shows, exactly what you're paying for, you have no record of what they're supposed to do. So you have no recourse if they don't do something. So you want to make sure that you're getting all that information of exactly what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and why they're going to do it. With all that, again, my name is Brandon with Task Force Pest and Mold Control. Real quick, everybody, I wanted to splice this in at the end because I forgot one of the biggest, most important factors about hiring a contractor and making sure that they did the right work. If you can't physically get into the space with your contractor, a lot of attics are very dangerous to walk in. Crawl spaces are really hard to get into. Request that they take pictures. Request that they take video if need be, and make sure they show you a good 360 view of what they've done. Don't just trust their word that they did the right thing and that they did everything right. Ask them if they can take pictures in stages. What we do typically when we remove all the insulation, we take a picture before we touch it, a picture after the insulation's down, a picture after it's been treated. Most of the time, if we do treat the wood, we mix in a dye with the borate solution to show that all the wood has been treated. Make sure that they have pictures of all the insulation going back in. Make sure they have pictures of any of the the vapor barrier and all that kind of stuff. Any hydroxyl system that they say they're going to put in. All that stuff is extremely important to make sure that you have picture and or video documentation of. If they can, have them send it to you through your email. We try to accommodate our customers however we can. So if a customer can accept a video file through email, we'll take a video file and email it to them. We take pictures, we add it to the report at the end in a folder that we give them at the end of the job to show them all the stuff we've done, pictures that show the progress of everything on the way. And it's also a really good portfolio for us to show our next client. This is our last job. This is what we did. This is what we do. And we have hundreds, if not thousands, of portfolios with jobs that we've completed to show our customers, to show that we've done good work. We have a good portfolio of work. We're also not above giving references if a customer asks for some. If they say, hey, I don't know how good your mold remediation work is, do you have 3 references that you can give me? Not a problem. I'll give you 3 customer references. Those are things that any good business wouldn't have a problem giving. If they're apprehensive about doing any of that stuff, it's another good telltale sign that they're not the right company for you. So with that in mind, I'm going to bring this video to a close. I appreciate everybody who's clicked on this video, who bared through this and went through this process. If you could, give me a like, share this video to anybody that you think is going to be interested in this content. And I hope to see you guys in the future. Thank you.